There are other things that we will now, having inherited a state with the worst per capita deficit in the nation, and a state that was paying its bills at about a 120-day delay, which I didn't realize when I was running for governor. So I had a $3.6 billion deficit in the next budget, and I had greater than 3 months worth of bills to pay and make up the difference for behind me. We have stabilized the state's economy. We have shrunk the size of state government. We have reduced our overall debt, when you include pensions and OPEB obligation reductions, of about $26 billion over a 20-year period of time. Now is the time for us to move even more aggressively in making Connecticut a more business-friendly environment. How do we do that? We've got to take on the issue of regulation. There are too many regulations. No one's looking at them and reviewing them and doing away with the ones that are no longer necessary but require additional paperwork. Quite frankly, we need to analyze for value add regulations. We have too many regulations that are too time consuming, that actually don't do a whole lot except drive costs up in the state of Connecticut. So very shortly we will be undertaking a major review and modification of those requirements. Now, the legislature has a kind of wacky system when it comes to regulation, with respect to the legislature having to approve it through a committee vote if it's a delegated if it's a delegated function as opposed to directly written into legislation. We also need to review how we make regulations and how they're approved. So we are going to have very shortly a major undertaking with respect to streamlining our approach to regulation as it impacts most particularly manufacturing in the state of Connecticut. Again, the industry that drives about 11% of our total employment. A couple of other things I want to touch on before perhaps we take some questions is I'm not sure that every manufacturer in this room understands all of the tool set that we have to help you grow any longer. For instance, in the 8 years that preceded my becoming governor of the state of Connecticut, Connecticut invested in 119 companies in the state of Connecticut. 8 years, 119 companies. In the over 2.5 years that I've been governor of the state of Connecticut, we have invested in over 900 companies. Some of those in this room. The EXP, or the Small Business Express program, is making dollars available on a matching basis for people who come forward, apply for those loans, demonstrate that they are making an investment in their establishment, in their business, agreeing to invest some amount of their own money into retaining employees and or adding employees, and then we'll match with respect to the purchase up to a certain amount of that new equipment necessary to do that. I have visited manufacturers in the state of Connecticut in the last couple of weeks who've taken advantage of the Small Business Express program to buy that additional piece of equipment. We're talking, some of you are involved in aerospace. I have visited small manufacturers in aerospace that have made their own investments, taken advantage of the EXP program and enlarged their capacity for doing work for other individuals on a value-added basis. It's a great program. You should take a look at it. There are a number of subsidies through DECD and the Labor Department with respect to hiring. We have great programs if you hire a veteran or a person who's unemployed. We recognize that as a state that failed to properly prepare a replacement workforce, a lot of that goes onto your shoulders. So we have programs that actually subsidize you taking that person in, understanding that there's a training component. And during that training component, period of time, 3 months up to 6 months, we understand you're not getting the full value of that employee because you're involved in training that employee. We have programs to close that gap. One of the more interesting programs we have is an apprenticeship program where we will help fund on an hourly basis you're taking in an apprentice as well. These are great programs to make sure that you have ample opportunity to kick the tires with respect to an employee at less than full cost, train an employee at less than full cost to you, and these are programs that I would urge you to go to the Labor Department site and the DECD site and understand the full complement of programs that we have. This is not the same state of Connecticut that you were used to 3 years ago. This is a state of Connecticut that is vying for job creation and concentrating on a number of areas, not the least of which is the portion of manufacturing that we actually do excel at, which is precision manufacturing. I'll also point out to you, by the way, with respect to aerospace, and there were several that mentioned their participation in aerospace, on a per capita basis, we are the second most intense state with respect to aerospace industry production. And so now let me take that piece of information and slide to what really is a bright future in Connecticut. If you think about United Technologies and their involvement, obviously, in aerospace, and think about what they have done over the last few years in two particular product lines. The new geared engine has not lost a truly competitive bid since it was announced as a product and since its prototypes were built. Now, they've lost bids in other nations when there was basically it was set up for a different manufacturer. But on a truly competitive basis, they're winning just about everything. That's secure. If you think of the lifespan of a mid-sized engine, a mid-sized aircraft engine, being 25 years, production potentially stretching out for 30 years. What that means is, as long as we hang on to our portion of that production, there's going to be a lot of continuing production in the state of Connecticut with respect to that one product. That doesn't even include the F-35 engine, both of those engines going into levels of production in Connecticut as Pratt & Whitney retools over the next 18 months for high levels of production. If we just played off of that, we could have a secure future as long as we find ways to lower cost with respect to manufacturing on a precision basis. Because I'm not confused. United Technologies is going to put everybody in this room in competition with other suppliers as they are under pressure to lower their costs, particularly on the government side of the F-35 engine production. I understand all of those things. But there are some big things happening in the state of Connecticut with respect to aerospace manufacturing.